So, episode 29 of the 1000-Year Blood War arc anime is here, and it brought with it once again a lot of brand new content. In fact, almost half the episode was made up of totally new material, which does seem to be a very welcome trend so far with part 3. In the case of episode 29, that new material mostly came in the form of an extensive backstory for Jushiro Ukitake, the captain of the 13th Division who just invoked the ritual of Kamikake, sacrificing his life to act as an anchor for the Soul King and stabilizing the three worlds at the same time that were on the brink of total annihilation. This new backstory was incredibly welcome, in my opinion. Ukitake has always been criminally underserved by the source material, and one of the prevailing thoughts running through my mind while watching this backstory unfold for the first time was pure amazement at just how little of this character we've really seen in the past. The purpose, therefore, of the new material found in this episode specifically is slightly different then to the changes and additions we've seen in the past, in that its primary function isn't to serve the overarching story of the 1000-Year Blood War arc. Instead, it is to pay tribute to a character who desperately needed it, while possibly hinting at future developments to come. And so, in today's video, we're going to be taking a deeper look at Ukitake's backstory and everything that was shown to us in that roughly 10-minute segment. To be honest, considering how long it takes me to write up the episode reviews, I may keep making these interstitial videos for as long as they keep giving me interesting, tantalizing new content to really dive into every week. So, speaking of which, what secrets and what hidden details can we find in Ukitake's brand new backstory? Let's take a look. However guys, once you're done with the video, if you enjoyed it and you want to see more from me and the channel, then make sure to hit that subscribe button now in order to stay up to date with everything I'm releasing, especially over the course of the 1000-Year Blood War arc part 3. It really does help the channel out a lot, and I really do appreciate it very much, so thank you for your continued support. First of all then, before we take a look at the anime's version, what kind of a flashback, if any, did Ukitake receive at this point here in the manga? Well, truthfully, not much of one at all, and honestly it's by looking at what came first in the source material that we can really highlight just how stark of a difference the anime has made. In chapter 616, as Ukitake invokes the Kamikake, we briefly transition to the outside of a shrine. It's the middle of the night and rain is coming down hard. Within the shrine, we can see a critically ill Ukitake lying on the floor, his eyes barely cracked open and foam running from his mouth. In the background, we can hear someone unseen calling out to Mimihagi to please save this child, before we see what appears to be Mimihagi itself in a very small panel. And that's really it. There's nothing else here in the way of a flashback. I was never sure about the shot of Mimihagi at the end either. Is that supposed to be just the statue of the right arm, or has it actually appeared, materialized before them? Or is it meant to be the embodiment that Ukitake sees in his mind? We don't know, but thankfully the anime gives us a much better look at all of this. So, considering that's all we received in the manga, you can see why it was so eye-opening when the anime expanded so massively on Ukitake's backstory. But yeah, there you have it. That's the flashback as it appears in the original chapter. There's nothing about his actual meeting with Mimihagi nor about the rest of Ukitake's life. So, what about the anime? Well, as a strange darkness begins to emanate from his back, Ukitake chants the name Mimihagi before the episode transitions to a dark and stormy night somewhere in the far-flung outskirts of the Rukongai many, many years ago. As the rain lashes down upon the isolated shrine, we can hear a couple of desperate voices within, calling out to this strange god as a very young Ukitake lies on the wooden floor, grimacing in pain and even foaming at the mouth. First things first, a couple of small details that I noticed. The shrine is noted as being located in Rukon District, East 76 District, Sakahone. And there's a couple of interesting things about this, most prominently that the district is called Sakahone, possibly named after the original captain of the 13th Division, Saizo Sakahone. It definitely doesn't feel like a coincidence either that the future captain of the 13th Division would have his life saved in a shrine found in a district named after his predecessor. Considering how long ago this must have been too, I wonder if Sakahone was actually still the captain at this time as well. Also, I wonder if each of the original captains of the Gotei 13 actually have a district named after them. But, well, perhaps having the 76th district named after you isn't much of an honour, as it's been said before that the further away from the Serete the districts actually are, the rougher and more dangerous they become. And with only 80 districts per section of the Rukongai, that places this particular shrine in a very deprived part of the Soul Society. But it's interesting too then that this shrine to Mimihagi is found so far away from the centre of the Soul Society. It really is hidden deep within the slum outskirts, which maybe explains why so many Shinigami have only heard whispers of Mimihagi's existence. Another interesting point about this is that Ukitake comes from a lower noble family, meaning they wouldn't have lived anywhere near District 76. And yet not only did his parents know of Mimihagi, but they were at least desperate enough and believed enough to travel across the entirety of the dangerous and violent Rukongai to reach this particular shrine. It's fascinating stuff to me. But anyway, enough about the shrine. Ukitake's parents have a greatly expanded role here in the anime. We actually see what they look like, and they have more dialogue too. Where in the manga they merely ask Mimihagi to save Ukitake's life, here they seem to have a much deeper understanding of what might happen, asking Mimihagi to kill the illness eating away our child and devour his organs, meaning they knew from the very start that the Kamikake would eventually kill and consume Ukitake one day. But still, giving him a chance at a life when he is otherwise doomed is more than worth it in their eyes. They also refer to Mimihagi as the divine hand from the heavens. As Ukitake's situation worsens and he begins to foam at the mouth, his mother, sobbing, apologises for bearing him so unhealthy. At this, Ukitake manages to just about open his eyes and wipe away his mother's tears. And in this moment, Mimihagi seemingly decides to help the boy, tears running from the statue's own eye. Of course, the imagery of a weeping statue is associated with both supernatural and religious forces, but perhaps more interestingly than that, I think Mimihagi only decides to help Ukitake when he sees how inherently kind Ukitake is. Even on death's door, Ukitake as a 3-year-old child thinks only about his mother, and so Mimihagi decides to step in at last. As Mimihagi's tears run down its statue, a darkness spreads, enveloping Ukitake. The boy awakes in a strange, ethereal plane, not too dissimilar from the primordial sea from last week's vision. And he's facing down the true arm of the Soul King itself, in the flesh, so to speak, the actual manifestation of Mimihagi. Not only is this an awesome moment, but it's a beautiful one too. I really love how the anime depicts this space. But it's a little strange. The fact Mimihagi is standing there with tears collecting under its eye tells me the statue itself seemingly housed Mimihagi perfectly, but I wonder how that actually works. Could the statue be Mimihagi's physical body, perhaps fossilized after 1,000,000 years separated from Adnias? Or does Mimihagi just inhabit statues built in its image? Someone must have seen Mimihagi's physical form at some point in order to craft a statue of it, its robes and all. To be honest, I have absolutely no idea. But it is cool seeing Mimihagi wearing what is presumably the ornate sleeve of the Soul King, but now as a gown instead. Instinctively, Ukitake seems to know to collect Mimihagi's tears. The tears themselves gather to form one large droplet, which Ukitake then attempts to drink. Suddenly, however, his body swells and a dark power explodes from his eyes. It's clear then that even taking in this tiny portion of the Soul King's power delivered through but a teardrop is an immense task for someone, with much of it bursting forth from Ukitake's form. Mimihagi looks on in an almost ominous, dispassionate way, but I think it's because he expects Ukitake to be able to survive this. And survive it Ukitake does, with his form briefly replaced by a shadowy reflection of Mimihagi itself. This is an interesting moment because to me it implies that the real Mimihagi still exists elsewhere, and all he's done is essentially turn Ukitake into a proxy of sorts for a lesser version of itself. But unless the story is changed greatly, which it may very well be, I'm not entirely sure how that works, considering what happens later when Yhwach destroys Mimihagi and essentially absorbs it for himself. Either way, the shadowy Mimihagi disperses, leaving Ukitake in its place. But interestingly, Ukitake has black hair for a brief moment. It's been revealed before that Ukitake's white hair is a result of his illness, so this black hair is actually his original appearance. So what does this signify? To me, it symbolises Mimihagi's power to hold back the sickness. We later see Mimihagi leaving his hair, returning it to its white form, but it's done enough already to imply that yes, Mimihagi will keep the sickness at bay while it is enshrined within Ukitake's body. This is further evidenced by the black-haired Ukitake opening his eyes to reveal Mimihagi's form reflected upon them, the right arm's eye also Ukitake's eye at the same time. So what this basically means on a surface level is that while Mimihagi inhabits his body, it will return Ukitake to a time prior to his illness, albeit not entirely, as that illness does still remain, but it will not progress any further. With Ukitake's life saved, the anime then continues his flashback. We now see Ukitake in perhaps his early teens, I'd say, making his way through a much nicer, more affluent part of the Rukongai. Unless the Ukitake family lives in the Seirete itself, which I'm not entirely sure about, we'll talk about that a little later, this is presumably close to his family home. While a much nicer rendition of the Rukongai than we've really ever seen before, it is still not perfect. As we see in the anime, this thug was willing to attack this old lady with his wooden sword purely because she lightly brushed him with her sleeve and then felt no need to apologise. Ukitake's ability to be the nice guy in the face of every situation is on show here, as he tells the man to just come and join the Shinigami Academy with him if he wants to fight for real. When the man attempts to shove Ukitake away, the boy grabs his hand and tries to shake it instead, casually demonstrating his incredible physical power and dexterity. When the man is finally able to pull his hand away, we can see that it's been bruised by Ukitake's grip. Ukitake suddenly coughs up blood, an ailment that will affect him for the rest of his days, a result of Mimihagi consuming and inhabiting his lungs. We next see Ukitake a few years later, likely towards the end of his time in the academy. Here he spars with another student, Kyoraku Shunsui, under the watchful eyes of Yamamoto, Unohana, and Sasakibe. As I mentioned in my reaction, Yamamoto and Sasakibe look exactly the way they do in their battle with Yhwach and the Lichtreich, yet Unohana has clearly given up the sword at this point, taking on the name Retsu, as evidenced by her different design. By the way, I think it's kind of interesting that Unohana is wearing a captain's Hayori, but Yamamoto isn't. Maybe he didn't wear one when he was teaching in the academy, I have no idea, but he did have one on when he took on Yhwach during their initial battle. Either way, this is likely to be fairly soon after the end of the war as the Gotei 13 slowly transitions into a more peaceful organization. Yamamoto also has both his scars, meaning Sasakibe has already achieved bankai, and this is in line with the lore, as chapter 486 notes that Sasakibe achieved bankai before Kyoraku or Ukitake were even born. And since episode 7 showed Yamamoto with 2 scars when he battled Yhwach as well, I guess it's possible neither of them was born when the initial war took place. It's cool to see that even here they are both already dual-wielding. Not only that, but we get an early hint at Kyoraku's cold-blooded, almost underhanded nature in battle. Despite Ukitake coughing up blood in the middle of his attack, Kyoraku still tries to strike him, taking advantage of his opponent's weakness. But it's revealed that this is in fact Ukitake's first ever meeting with Kyoraku, which is very nice to see. Ukitake also reveals that he needs Kyoraku's help. He wants to be introduced to the owner of a particular sweet shop in order to buy treats for his siblings. And this is something about Ukitake that would continue long into the future, as it's well known that he constantly buys sweets and gifts and stuff like that for Hitsugaya as well. When Kyoraku reveals the sweets have alcohol in them, Ukitake grows concerned, but it's too late, as his younger brothers and sisters get a hold of them anyway. Again, it's hard to know if they are currently in the Serete or not, but you can see from the gates the relative size of the Ukitake estate. Over the course of the next year, Ukitake and Kyoraku continue to spend time together at the academy, growing closer until the moment Ukitake feels comfortable taking Kyoraku to the shrine of Mimihagi. Again, they've presumably had to go quite far out of their way to reach the shrine, but I guess it's not like they can't protect themselves even at this point. Perhaps unsurprisingly, Kyoraku has heard rumours of Mimihagi before. Kyoraku, like Ukitake, is a member of a lower noble house, but even he notes that these rumours came from the upper noble clans, so the very highest of them all. The same 5 clans whose ancestors supposedly dismembered the Soul King himself. Kyoraku notes that apparently long ago, a divine power was detached from the Soul King and fell to Earth. But they wonder how that could be possible, since as far as they know, the Soul King still resides in the royal palace up in the heavens. We know that Kyoraku is incredibly perceptive, and it seems here that he immediately puts everything together. While the statue's eye is what catches one's attention initially, the statue itself is shaped like a fist. Kyoraku then goes on to reveal that he knows that the left arm of the Soul King supposedly controls advancement, while Ukitake suspects the right arm controls stillness, based on his situation. While Mimihagi saved his life, his illness hasn't gone away, it's just being held in place. When Ukitake wonders if Kyoraku started to believe the rumours after hearing about Ukitake's circumstances, Kyoraku reveals that he snooped around a bit where he shouldn't, clearly learning more about Ukitake than was ever officially released. But of course, Kyoraku has a bit of a habit for doing this, as when Yamamoto caught him in his personal quarters many years ago. And that's actually another interesting point. We know that while Kyoraku came from an established house too, he viewed Yamamoto as something of a father figure, having known him personally since he was a child. Ukitake views Yamamoto in a similar way, but we don't know from what age Ukitake knew the Captain Commander on a personal basis. In fact, the more I think about it, the more weird it is that the very young child Kyoraku was messing around in Yamamoto's quarters. That would have been a very, very long time ago, so Kyoraku's family and Yamamoto maybe had some kind of relationship that would even enable that to happen in the first place. Honestly though, regarding this scene with the 2 of them in front of the shrine, what surprises me the most is just how much they actually know. Of course, it is all hearsay and conjecture, but it's entirely true. Now, we know that knowledge regarding the Soul King's limbs can be found at least partly in books, as we see when Mayuri reveals he knows the truth as well. But still, I love Kyoraku's line about how the Soul King's very body is said to bestow blessings. Everything the anime is adding is really making Adnias feel like a true god of this world. Also, it's interesting too when you consider that the right arm of the Soul King acted in a similar way to Yhwach. It bestowed Ukitake with what his soul needed in that moment to cure his ailment. Unlike Yhwach, however, who quickly killed those he blessed in order to get his power back, Mimihagi essentially had to give its entire self to Ukitake and stayed with Ukitake for the entirety of his life. Anyway, their conversation ends with Ukitake asking Kyoraku if he's going to prevent him from joining the Gotei 13 as a result of Mimihagi, to which Kyoraku simply replies that he won't let Ukitake die so easily. We then skip forward considerably, finding ourselves perhaps mere hours after the death of Kaien Shiba, a major event in Ukitake's captaincy. Summoned before the Central 46, Ukitake explains that he doesn't want to appoint a new vice captain, as there's no one that can replace Kaien. Sorry, Kyone and Sentaro, rough break, I guess. Rukia is still far too inexperienced at the time, but crucially, this shows just how impressed Ukitake must have been by her efforts in the Rankar arc to feel that she was at last worthy to carry on Kaien's legacy. However, the Central 46 press the issue, saying that they are aware that Ukitake was born with an incurable disease, and even had an episode while facing the hollow that killed Kaien. Therefore, he must take a vice captain. Ukitake, however, rebukes them with the same logic that Kyoraku would use on them a few years later, noting that the power to appoint a vice captain lies with the captain, a rule that was instated by the Central 46. So yes, this sequence is a deliberate reference to how Kyoraku would also contend with the Central 46 in the Thousand Year Blood War arc, and creates a nice parallel between the two. Afterwards, we see that Ukitake spoke with Kyoraku in the wake of Kaien's death in a really nice and poignant scene. With the rain pouring down in front of them, Kyoraku notes about wanting 2 or more vice captains himself, which, while a reference to his position in the Thousand Year Blood War arc once again, feels a little odd this time, as he could just appoint a second vice captain if he really wanted to. Again, considering Kyoraku uses the same logic against the Central 46 that Ukitake does here, it's clearly not something that just the Captain Commander can get away with. Kyoraku tells Ukitake that there comes a time to put your life on the line, but this simply wasn't his. Instead, all they can do is mourn Kaien's death. And this again is very intriguing to me for a couple of reasons. In a sense, Ukitake did put his life on the line when he decided to face metastasia himself after Kaien was possessed, but perhaps the idea is that the Hollow didn't really pose a threat to him at all. Instead, Ukitake's time will of course come later, as we're seeing play out in this week's episode. As for Kyoraku, well, his time to put his life on the line will come soon enough. Kyoraku hands Ukitake one of the same sweets they had when they first met, and Ukitake smiles. It's a very, very good scene. It's a lovely scene, and this is what I mean when I say it doesn't add anything to the overall plot progression, but it does so much for the characters involved. To see Ukitake in a period of grief and mourning after Kaien's death, yet still retaining his almost superhuman composure as a captain, humanizes the character greatly. In fact, I think it was this moment that made me lament just how little time we'd spent with Ukitake himself, as this feels like a side to the character we never really saw. He's not just this extremely happy-go-lucky captain, he's a real, fully fleshed out three-dimensional character. Skipping ahead now to another moment of mourning, we see Ukitake, Kyoraku, and Unohana gathered around the broken blade of Yamamoto after his death during the first Quincy invasion. Now, while initially you might be forgiven for thinking that this little scene comes immediately after that first gathering of the captains from episode 8, in actuality it almost certainly comes a bit later. The reason for that is Kyoraku is now the head captain, whereas he wasn't yet appointed when he came to break up that first meeting. Secondly, when he notes that he never knew giving out orders as head captain felt so horrible, it's likely he's referring to the fact that he's basically sentenced Unohana to death, which she later references. Ukitake notes that in better circumstances he'd be sharing a drink with Kyoraku, likely to celebrate his friend's promotion. However, with Yamamoto's death and Unohana's impending fate, well, now isn't exactly a good time. Much in the way Kyoraku said that Ukitake's time to put his life on the line would come, Unohana's has now arrived. Speaking of Unohana, she then wonders if there was ever a time when drinking actually eased Kyoraku's worries. Kyoraku says that there was, particularly whenever he was dumped by a girl. As the camera pans to Unohana's Zanpakuto, she notes that he need not worry about that this time, as he has her full attention, referring to the fact that he's asked her to carry out this task of training Zaraki, and clearly she's agreed to it. Kyoraku then requests that he be left alone for a moment, and this is a great bit of voice acting, by the way. Kyoraku sounds truly despondent, somber, and almost quiet in a way that he never normally does. He's clearly still trying to process everything that's going on. And so you can see that this flashback isn't just beneficial for Ukitake, but really everyone involved. Heading outside, we get this beautiful shot of Ukitake and Unohana standing on the balcony of the 1st Division barracks, the two of them silhouetted against the fading sun. Unohana bids Ukitake farewell, and as she looks up at him, she knows full well that her time has come. However, Ukitake responds with, "We'll see each other soon." And with that intriguing moment of finality, we come to the end of Ukitake's extensive, incredible flashback. What does that last moment mean, if anything, and why has it captivated fans' imaginations across the world? It's clear that as Unohana knows her time is up, so too does Ukitake. After all, it would only be a day or two from this moment that he enacts the kamikake at the shrine in the woods, just as the Vandenreich launch their second assault, thereby condemning himself to death. Clearly, he, along with Kyoraku, anticipated that Yhwach would make it to the Soul King, and therefore a contingency needed to be put together. So when Ukitake tells Unohana that he'll see her soon, he's simply referencing joining her on the other side in death. But of course, there's a little more to it than that these days. As we know from 2021's Hell chapter, both Ukitake and Unohana end up in Hell in the wake of their deaths, along with Yamamoto, their fates seemingly the catalyst for a brand new arc of Bleach, with Ukitake in particular being the final soul sent to Hell that then enables the doors of Hell to be broken open. But since then, we've heard virtually nothing on that front. So, when Ukitake says this to Unohana, does he know that they're going to Hell? Is he speaking literally when he says he'll see her soon? Well, no, I really doubt it. Don't forget that the idea that captains were going to Hell after death was only confirmed for the first time ever in the Hell chapter. Before that, it was only ever an old wives' tale at best, something that wasn't taken seriously by anyone. If the captains knew with certainty that they were going to Hell, I think steps would have been taken to at least see if there was anything that could be done. Certainly, I don't think Kyoraku would be carrying out the Konso Reisai ceremony for both his father figure and best friend if he knew he was damning them for all eternity by doing so. So no, I don't think in-universe that's what Ukitake meant at all. But for us fans, well, that's a different matter. It does feel like a deliberate nod. There's no denying that this scene feels very conspicuous to me. Is it a tease for the arc that must not be named? Honestly, I'm torn, but I'm actually leaning towards the idea that, yeah, it might be. The anime is being written with the benefit of hindsight, so almost everything new that we see is being deliberately, consciously added for one reason or another. And unless the team is completely clueless, there's no chance they wouldn't add that line between these two characters without expecting it to conjure up questions about hell. Now, does this mean anything is ever going to come of it? Is this line ever going to be addressed again? Who knows? Probably not. At the end of the day, perhaps it is just a throwaway remark designed to stir up a little excitement. Or maybe it really has nothing to do with hell at all, and is quite literally just Ukitake's way of letting Unohana know that he won't be far behind her. Ukitake has known, from the moment Mimihagi possessed him, that he was meant for more. That his moment would one day come, the moment when he would have to sacrifice it all as a result of the Kamikake, and that time is nearly here. But that's about it for UKITAKE'S flashback. There's quite a bit going on, albeit, as I said earlier, none of it is too obfuscated and weird like the entirety of the vision last time. Instead, it's just fantastic to finally have a dedicated look at Ukitake himself, a character who has really deserved it for some time now, and of course there will be even more to get into during our full review of the episode coming soon. People went into part 3 really hoping that Ukitake would be given more, that more would be done with him. And while some people may have wanted a little more from Ukitake in the present day, I can understand that, a meaty flashback like this that really goes through some of the most pivotal moments of Ukitake's life is not only welcome, but congratulated. I think it's absolutely fantastic, and it definitely helps to do the character justice. But that's it for the video, guys. As always, I really hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you took something of value away from it as well. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. What did you think of Ukitake's new flashback? What was your favourite moment? Did I miss any secrets or hidden details that you found in there? If I did, do please let me know about them in the comments below. And as always, I want to end the video by saying a massive thank you and giving a huge shout out to my wonderful supporters over on Patreon, without who I simply wouldn't be able to do this. If you like what I do here over on YouTube and you too want to help support me that little step further, thank you. By supporting me at the $1 tier a month, you can get your name in the credits of every video just like this, and at the $2 tier or higher, you can enjoy every video I put out completely free of baked-in YouTube ads. Alright everyone, but once again, thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed it, and until next time, I'll catch you later, and I'll see you then.